Good evening, everybody. Shavua Tov. May it be a good week for us. My name is Rabbanit Bracha Jaffe. I am the Associate Rabbi at the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale, and we are just so delighted that you are joining us. This comes at the end of our first annual, what we hope to be, Wellness and Mental Health Shabbat, where we focus on bringing warmth, calm, and healing to people, offering tools and tips, sermons, divrei Torah, words of Torah, that move people into a place of healing. And we focus the Shabbat on soulful singing, on words of Torah, and classes and workshops that focus on the individual. But this session, Motzaei Shabbat, Saturday night, will be an armchair conversation with two people who I will introduce soon, where we focus on community healing. This coming parasha, Parashat Bo, will be the last 3 plagues in the 10 plagues that rained down on the Egyptians in Egypt, and 2 of them speak of darkness. Arbe, the locust, it says that there were so many of them that they covered the eye of the sky, and they covered the sun, and there was darkness. And then there was the plague of darkness, which was so thick that people could not get up if they were sitting and could not sit down if they were standing. But in Eretz Goshen, where the Israelites were, there was light. And this session is about bringing light within community. Reading from how we framed this evening, we are living in a time of profound uncertainty. Communally, globally, many of us are still carrying so many difficult emotions, grief, anxiety, disorientation, but we still want to stay connected with each other. And yet many of us hold differing views. Many of us don't know how to name that and how to connect. The armchair conversation that we'll be having will explore how the Jewish community can serve as a grounding force when life often, especially now, feels unstable. And we hope that you will leave with language and perspective and practical insights for navigating difficult emotions while strengthening relationships and communal bonds. And I'm so delighted to introduce our 2 panelists for this conversation. Dr. Tara Lieberman, welcome, a licensed psychologist in New York City, specializing in crisis, grief, and communal trauma. But here's something that really just so spoke to us and spoke to me. Following what happened on October 7th, Tara saw a need in the community, and she mobilized mental health clinicians to provide free virtual support for the Jewish community. The founder and executive director at the Jewish Community Mental Health Initiative of the JCMHI at the American Psychological Foundation. Tara, welcome, and we're excited to be hearing from you and learning from you.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here with everyone.
And our other panelist, Shimi Feintuch, some of you may know him from around Riverdale and was our own scholar in residence together with his wonderful wife, Rabbi Yafa Epstein. But Shimi is a psychotherapist, professor, and public speaker. His work focuses on addiction, relationships, and stress reduction. We really need the stress reduction. I personally have benefited, by the way, from his stress reduction. It really worked. And Shimi lectures at YU's Wurzweiler's School of Social Work, and again, something that particularly speaks to me, serves on the board of Jewish Queer Youth, JQY, an amazing, wonderful organization that really supports queer youth in so many different ways. So welcome to both of you. Welcome to everybody who came this evening. And we are going to start with a question that we are going to ask you, Tara, first, and then turn to Shimi. So, Tara, if you could talk to us a little bit about how do we begin to process something so large, the aftermath of October 7th, all the losses, everything that's been going on in Israel. That's just on one hand, and then what we've been experiencing firsthand, which is this tremendous rise in anti-Semitism. If you could address that, please, and it feels too big for any one individual to hold alone.
Yes, I'm absolutely happy to address that. And that is exactly true, what you are sharing, that it is too large for anyone to hold individually. And that is why we began this initiative. And we often hear from our community members, how do I hold this? How do I hold all of these feelings? It's too much. I don't even know how to name them. People will come into groups sometimes saying, I am feeling so much, so many things. I can't speak today. I don't have the words. So these are very normal experiences for this time that we're in. And that is why it really takes our community as a whole to be able to hold these feelings, to hold the pain, to hold the grief, to hold the uncertainty, to hold sometimes the joy and the relief and the hope. Really, we need to do this together. And what we found very early on was that most of us have never been in a time like this before. And we didn't have a language for it. We really didn't have words, something similar to or parallel to what we're hearing from Israelis that, they hadn't been in this exact moment or this exact place before. And Jews in the diaspora are feeling very similarly. They're feeling like, I don't know what to do. I feel like the ground has shifted and it's unfamiliar territory. So, what we found was that really by bringing community together, that is when we are developing a language. That is when we're developing our story. Certainly, we hear from outside of our community. Many individuals and other communities may tell us what they see or what they're thinking about what's happening in the world. But we know that Jewish people need to be the ones to articulate and create our story. And really, we need to do that together because there's been so much outside of our community, sometimes within the community, that maybe challenging what we're thinking and feeling, maybe what we're calling invalidating our experiences. And we know that we need others to really bear witness to us and help us really make meaning and be able to create language for our experiences. So this is done within a community and really we create our collective meaning as a community. We have our own individual stories, but we have a collective story as well. That is what happens when we experience a collective trauma or an identity-based harm in a community. We need to be together to create language for that. And Jewish people are really working hard right now to name our emotions, make meaning of them, understand them, to be with others, to validate our experiences, and make sure that we're not dismissing them because the way we heal is really by engaging with all of these complicated emotions. And sometimes people feel as people were coming into groups, they felt like I'm not resilient. I'm feeling so much pain. We were able to help and still do. Many community members understand that actually experiencing pain is part of our capacity to be resilient, that we need to be able to have that full range of affect and connect to all of those feelings. And the way to do it safely and in a supportive way is finding others to hold that with us. So this is an introduction to what we've been seeing across well over 2,000 support groups and working with thousands of Jews across the diaspora, which has been a great privilege for all of the professionals on this project.
Okay, that's pretty amazing. 2,000 support groups. This is in the last 2 years.
Yes, we launched them about 2 years ago, exactly. Yeah, we
That's,
launched them 2 years ago.
I think that that alone tells us the absolute need for these support groups if it's so quickly spread across the globe. So thank you for the work that you've done for the vision. Shimi, I want to turn to you. And Tara spoke in broad strokes, somewhat broad strokes, about the need for naming things, for stories, for doing things together, because it just is so much for each of us to bear alone. And maybe you could speak a little bit about how does this show up in everyday life at home, in shul, or in the ways that people reach out or pull back. Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yes, sure. Thank you. And I'm Honored to be here. Thank you. And Dr. Tara, I'm in awe of the work that you've done. The more I hear, the more I want to hear. Um, just to echo some of the words that you said, finding others to hold it with us, a metaphor that I've seen used for this and for other issues that are really too large is just imagine trying to carry a 2-ton beam on your own. It's literally impossible, right? You're going to get crushed. And this is something that we can't do alone. We can't do as individuals. We absolutely need community to help us support each other. And there are things that community can accomplish that individuals cannot. Like sitting with other people with the same experience, having other people hear you, having other people bring what's inside out, and you realize that what's going on the inside of you is the same as what's going on the inside of them. There's no way to replicate that individually. And at the same time, a community is made up of many individuals. So the lens that I'm kind of coming at this with is like, what is the individual side of community work, of being involved in and being engaged in community? And what I like to think about first is the more that we understand what's happening inside for us, the more that we can get from community, the more that we can give to community, and the more that we can decide in what way engaging with community or not is useful for us. So it needs to start from self-awareness. One way to think about it is taking your emotional temperature. What am I feeling? What's going on inside? It's not always so obvious, and it can really fluctuate minute by minute, hour by hour. And certainly, I had times post October 7th where I was in complete overwhelm and complete despair. And then there were also pockets of time when I felt like I had more resources and more, I was doing more okay on the inside. So I would just welcome that question for all of us. Just, hey, how am I doing? What's going on the inside here? And then we can proceed from there. If we're going to be involved in community, if we're going to say, hey, maybe I need to take a bit of a back seat here, or do I want to be in charge of a group? Do I want to be leading a charge, saying something publicly, or do I want to be a participant? All of these things will be best equipped to make that decision if we're checked in with what's happening on the inside of us. So that's kind of the first thing that I would say. Um, and one thing that just relatedly, one thing that I heard, um, I forgot who said, so I won't quote exactly, but somebody said with all the terrible footage coming out of October 7th, there was someone like a media personality who said, "Don't look away." Like this is something that we really need to not forget about. We need to tell and show the world. And I thought that was really irresponsible to say, because we need to sometimes look away. It's really about balance. If we feel like we're a little too checked out and we're not enough in community, then maybe we need the balance to to shift back closer, and maybe we need. I know there are definitely times when I wasn't wasn't reading the news in a way that maybe would have been better if I was a little bit checked into what's going on. But there was a lot more where I was maybe a little bit too involved in it and too checked in, too much online and trying to change people's minds on the internet, which is, as we know, not really possible. But that starts from taking the emotional temperature. It starts from the emotional awareness.
Great. That's really helpful. And as you were saying those words that you heard somebody say, you should be watching the videos, I just cringed inside because you cannot give that as a blanket invitation. I
Mm.
personally know people, young people it happens to be, but it doesn't happen to have to be, who were watching because they felt they had to bear witness, did
Yeah.
not do good for them at all. They needed to seek professional help, which was helpful. So thank you for saying that it's not a one size fits all. And it's
Mhm.
not even a one size fits all for each person because one
Mm.
person one day be, I think now I'm ready. Somebody told me they had the movie about October 7th by Cheryl Sanders?
And
Yeah,
Sandler.
Sandberg. Yeah.
Sandberg, right? That they had it like waiting for 4 months in their basket, in their in basket, because they weren't ready yet to watch it. And when they were ready, they were able to do that. So I love that idea of the emotional temperature. I'm curious, and actually, I'm going to ask you two questions, Shameen, then go back to Tara. First of all, I'm curious when you say taking your emotional temperature, and you said it's not always easy to do. Is that something that you recommend having a conversation with someone who you feel comfortable and safe with? Maybe on a one-to-one, the idea of the emotional temperature to really, what am I feeling? So maybe that's a microcosm of community, just one person. I'm curious.
Mhm.
And then I would ask you if you have seen, where do you see community really working for people right now, and perhaps where it is not working? And then I'm actually going to ask you a similar question, Tara.
Yeah. Um, I like the idea of one-on-one as community as well. I Taking your emotional temperature is a skill, and it's best developed just one-on-one with yourself, I guess one on none, or just one. Um, but we can learn it a lot of different places. We can learn it in community. We can learn it one-on-one with a helpful person, a therapist, or something like that. But the real practice of it is in the privacy of our own thoughts and feelings. And I do this pretty often. I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I have a friend and mentor who um, is fond of using like pet names for himself. I haven't gotten into this yet, but he'll be like, "How are you, sweetie?" Which is, it's really tender and beautiful. But first relating with ourselves to be able to check in and ask the question.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Um,
I appreciate
yeah.
that. So now the second question.
Yeah. So how's community working for people? I think Dr. Tara is more qualified to kind of look at the like what the data is showing and what the what the big picture is. But on an individual on a smaller level, um, there are so many things that are working and that are not, and I really want to start from that, checking in with yourself, because thinking about like your social battery, if that's a thing, that's just like a way to think about it. um, it's really about balance, and there's no one size fits all, so it can't be do this or don't do that. It's what do I need right now? And I think there are so many programs, and the Bayat has the shul has so many programs, and often sometimes I feel like, oh, I want to go to that and I want to go to that, and I don't really have the energy to do all of it. And sometimes we need to engage in more, and sometimes we really do need that encouragement to say, hey, you know what, it would be really great if I pushed myself and went to that. And sometimes that can be counterproductive. And the only person who can really tell you that is yourself. So I want to again encourage the self-knowledge and the self-awareness.
Right.
Um, and then in terms of, engagement or disengagement, I think we all know this, but just to kind of say it out loud, there's engagement that's useful and there's engagement that's not useful. And in particular, I'm thinking about online engagement. Um, there have been a lot of online communities that can be really, really useful for people. And, I don't need to name any of them. I have some for me. And then I also know, and speaking from my own experience, that it can really, really devolve from there into something that can really be not useful. So whether it's endless scrolling or whether it's trying to change someone's mind or just exposure to the real wave of anti-Semitism that's, it's just kind of there online. It's there's just a lot of it, and it's just really easy to run into. So I would just, proceed with caution. Obviously, the internet is a place where some really great stuff can happen and also some really not great stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you for that cautionary note. I see somebody asked a question, so before I turn to you, Tara, and we really would love to hear from your wealth of experience, even just in the last 2 years. I do want to tell people that you're muted, but please drop in questions in the chat, and there will be time for a Q&A through the chat towards the end. So Tara, please, a similar question. You've, so much experienced 2,000. I can't even imagine what it's like navigating. I'm not sure how much you're involved in each one, but you must really have a tremendous amount of data. So we would love to hear from you how community is working, how for people right now, how it is not working, and anything else you would like to add to that.
Sure. So just to be clear, we actually are not yet at this point collecting quote data on our support groups, but we have been collecting program evaluation from both the clinician perspective as well as the participant perspective, and it's been, very, very positive across the board. So overall, we are really seeing community provide tremendous support during this time. I mean, look, our data and our observations are very similar. Right now we know from seeing the community, thousands of members of Jewish people across the diaspora and some from Israel, and as well as in our data, there's an emotional toll that these past 2.5 years have taken on our community. And first and foremost, the attacks in Israel on 10/7, collective grief is something that people experienced as a community across oceans. So even though we're geographically far apart, we are a people that are a small people, and we are connected. So people were experiencing collective grief. People are experiencing the rise in anti-Semitism that we have seen in our data is absolutely impacting mental health. And on top of that, we've just recently completed a study that's going to be sent to publication soon on traumatic invalidation, which is when the community is experiencing pain and distress and having real experiences when they are not seen, they're ignored, they're not heard, people aren't getting empathy or care. And so we have now been able to collect data on the mental health impacts of that as well. So there are impacts on our mental health from this kind of repeated invalidation. So it's compounding the mental health impacts of the rise in anti-Semitism, whether we're experiencing it directly or witnessing it, both impact our mental health, we have found in our studies. So what we're seeing in terms of community coming together is that not only are they able to bear witness to each other, validate their experiences, create language and meaning, but together we have a shared purpose, and we need to continue to find those shared purposes as a community, because those allow us to feel a sense of agency when we may be feeling helpless. We know we can't, end anti-Semitism, and we know we can't maybe prevent bad things from happening, or from the way we can't prevent people responding to us in a certain way, but we can find goals that are shared as a community. And when we do that, we are able to bind some of our emotions, give them a place to be shared, but also used to make a difference, make an impact for ourselves. So things like when we were working so hard to bring the hostages back home, we noticed that that was something the community not only were physically together, which is very, very helpful, but they were emotionally together. And that's something that we noticed a shift after that. When most of the living hostages were returned home, we were starting to see the community speak to having many complex feelings, not just relief, not just joy, but also other things that had begun to surface: anger, a lack of trust, what we're seeing as moral injury. Many things were coming out in the community that were surprising members. Why am I feeling this way? I thought I would only feel joy. And so when they lost that shared purpose, there is an impact on us. So what we're working with now is, what can we do together? And one of the things that you're asking is what works and what is maybe bumpy or more challenging in community. And that is that while we're a small people that are very connected, we also have incredibly diverse opinions and perspectives. So we have to work to be able to connect across those. And we need to find ways to hear each other, to listen, to empathize. It's actually how we are more intimately and authentically connected, when we can allow each other to have our different opinions and different perspectives, but stay connected. So that's something that we're really working on, with our community. It's certainly been challenging across our groups. we see regularly. People have very intense different feelings, anything from as small as, recently someone was feeling like very surprised about one of the anti-Semitic incidents that had occurred. And another group member was saying, how could you possibly be surprised? What's wrong with you? This is happening all the time. And so really helping the members of the group and of our wider community know that really both are true. And it takes all of us to be able to articulate those two things that feel opposing, but are actually really both true, and that we can welcome those two seemingly opposing, but really both very valid feelings and experiences. And so that is a lot of the work that we're doing, trying to bring these moments of that feel like rupture and feel like I'm going to feel lonely or isolated now within my own community, helping people stay together and have that sense of belonging within the community, even when we might feel or experience something different from each other.
I'm taking a breath.
Yeah, thank you. And if I can just say,
Please.
I was in Israel on that day on Sukkot when the hostages came back, and I also was expecting joy, and there was some, but it was mostly relief. And yeah, I just love what you said, Dr. Tara. It's just, like let's feel what we're feeling, and the have to feel something else is, not useful.
I hear how both of you are really giving permission to name what we are feeling and to experience what we're feeling, and that this is what I'm hearing from both of you, that it actually is important to name them and to sit with others, feel the connection somehow through it or with it. And I think that's really important, because a lot of us have just been holding it, I feel, inside and not allowing it out. Maybe it's too scary, or maybe we're not sure what we'll hear from others. So
That's right.
and that's so it
Yeah.
feels like you need to find safe spaces to that. Did you want to add to that, Sarah?
Well, I think that's exactly true. And certainly when so many people are feeling that it's unsafe to maybe share in general, they outside the community, even within the community, I need to feel so connected because I'm feeling lonely and isolated that it can really make people feel anxious about sharing something intimate, even, with close family members or good
Mm-hmm.
friends, because they're frightened. If I say something, am I going to feel rejected or isolated even more? And I just can't risk that. So it is a complicated time. And I think sometimes it does prevent people from sharing. And yet it's also so needed for us to feel that kind of connection during this time.
So I'm hearing a few things. I'm hearing how people can feel lonely and isolated even within community.
Mhm.
And I'm also hearing how important it is to name it. And I've heard this from people myself, I don't want to be friends with that person anymore. All they ever want to do is say X, or they never want to hear about Y or whatever it is. So something that I hope we will get to is, what do you suggest? Tachlis, like what, other than of course join one of your support groups, Sarah, which which is something we may come out with as well. Okay, so taking a breath, because I want to share with everybody who's on the Zoom that we've had conversations together beforehand, discussing and planning this evening, and we said how can we share the harder things, and it was really clear to Tara and to Shimi that we can't shy away from them. That is why we're here tonight, to talk about different parts. Yes, the parts that are beautiful and needed, and also to name the fact that it's not all like that. So I'm validating that, and also saying, we have spoken about it, a few of us, but maybe the people listening might say, wait a minute, okay, I just need a breath to hear that and then to move on. Shimi, I'm going to ask you a question.
Mhm.
How do people move back and forth between caring for themselves, showing up for community? They don't know what to tell their kids. They don't know what to tell themselves. I think you've spoken a lot. You've used the word balance a lot. Perhaps that's the lead-in. What is that balance between myself, community, taking care? You've spoken about taking your own emotional temperature. Tara's spoken very powerfully, as you have, about needing community. So How do we navigate between those two?
Yeah, there is no pat answer, as I'm sure you know. But that question, what do I tell my kids? Wait, what do I tell myself? That's a good reframe, right? What do I tell myself about what's going on? I mean, first of all, we may not yet know. This is something that we're still discovering. This is and I hear this from a lot of people that something shifted, something feels more broken, and part of it's October 7th, part of it may be the political climate. Um, but for us to kind of realize, like, hey, I don't really know everything right now, but I'm trying to ask myself, what do I make of this? How do I feel about things? And I know personally that my worldview has shifted since October 7th um, in ways that I don't love, and in ways that I feel like I'm still trying to figure out. So if I'm going to take my own advice, I guess that's okay, right? This is a work in progress. It's going to be. And I'm sure most of you have heard this metaphor, the when you're on the plane and they say, if there's a drop in pressure, put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on someone else. So easier said than done, and it's really easy to say, but it really is often hard to do when you see somebody struggling and you kind of know how to help. We are a nation, a people of caregiving, and we know how to do that really, really well, whether it's give love or give food or whatever the giving is. And the instinct is not always to check in with, putting the oxygen mask on ourselves first. If anything, it's the opposite. It's like, I'll breathe later, right? Like I got to help you now. So in whatever way you buy this, try to check in with yourself first, because we really can't deplete ourselves. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We need to be able to do this over the long term. And the worldview and how things have shifted, it will really continue to. The other thing I wanted to say is that when we engage with community, I would just suggest to create and mold a community that works for you. And just one specific way to do that is to be able to say, yeah, I don't want to talk with that person anymore. Or, someone in the chat said, like, people are so angry all the time. Yeah, look, we don't need to engage with that. And it's okay to leave a space, a group, a conversation, whatever, to be able to say, I don't want to have that conversation anymore. Um, it's okay for us to say, hey, can we talk about something that we need to talk about? And hey, can we not talk about this? Way before October 7th, I had this experience talking with somebody, and we kind of felt it was at the end of 2020. We kind of fell into the groaning about COVID. And I was like, could we not talk about COVID in this conversation? And it was I got good feedback about that. It was sometimes so liberating. So this is not to run away from the problems, but to allow ourselves to kind of create and mold the community that really works for us.
And I'm hearing also to set boundaries for ourselves and in conversation with others.
Yeah, and sorry, just one more
Yeah,
thing.
please.
I have a couple of friends and a couple of family members who are near and dear to me and have viewpoints that I really, really have trouble with, and they are on different poles. And the best guidance I got was from a mentor of mine who said that unless both people showing up to a conversation are really willing to be not reactive and open to listening, don't have the conversation. Like, I kind of felt obligated, like, no, I got to talk to this person because I gotta help them see reason, or whatever the fantasy was. It's not going to work unless I'm in an okay place and I'm not going to be reactive, and unless I know that they're not, and then we both want to listen. And that's usually not the case.
Right, right. Taking another breath. Thank you. Tara, How have you seen what giving to community feels like and actually means nowadays, especially for people who feel depleted? Could it be an added value? This is A, actually, there's two parts to this. Is what can it give for them to give to community, but what can that actually look like? I mean, we heard, I'm going to quote you on that, a nation of caregiving. That's kind of a beautiful, good title for like a drasha or something. A nation of caregiving. But, I'd love to hear more specifically because especially, I understand that you might have specific statistics. It's more about what you're hearing. Where are people finding what, and this would be more B, well, you have spoken about holding opposing emotions, which I think is so perfect and so good for people to hear that they both can be correct. Yes, we know there's a rise in anti-Semitism, and yes, I am still surprised that it happened in this synagogue and that there was a fire that burnt down. Like, it still takes me by surprise, and maybe it should. We don't want to expect it, so maybe they can both be correct. But so going along with A is, how are we going to create moments of light and grounding when we're living, as I said, with choshech? There's a lot of real communal darkness. And if you can make sense of everything I asked you, that would be great.
Well, I think there's so much. I think what we're all sort of realizing is there's so much for us to talk about, and we're trying to put it into this 1 hour. And I really like what Shimi was saying. I think that something we talk about also, this social battery, that we use these different we teach these different ways of coping, these tools, and one of them is drainers and chargers. And how do we decide like how we're going to move through the day? And we need to sometimes really understand what activities, what people, what environments maybe deplete us, and which ones nourish us or charge us. So these are things that help us find more balance when we look at our day and figure out, because we often have to be in situations or be with people who may deplete or drain us. And if we are recognizing that a lot of our day is with that, then we want to make sure we're pushing in something that nourishes us. And similarly, these, having to face situations that may be challenging. If we're going to end up in a situation with a family member or a friend or a coworker, we like that could be challenging. We like to think ahead. We call it coping ahead. And I've had people in my group sometimes ask, like, or I feel like something's wrong with me, that I'm worrying about this ahead of time. And we try and reframe that. You're actually problem solving it ahead of time. You are thinking through the situation, how you're going to manage it. And that is really connecting to your agency and what you do have control over, like you said, setting boundaries. In terms of how I'm seeing community support each other, or how that works, I really and so my heart is always warmed when we see our groups are made up of individuals who, some of them have been there for many, many months or over a year, and then others who are brand new, sometimes just entering that day for the first time. And the way we see community give back is those who've been able to gain strength and support from community for months or sometimes over a year. They are giving back to those new members. They are helping contain their sometimes very intense emotion when they are in a space where they can first time really feel or have someone recognize what they might be feeling. And they are providing a container and a real level of support that is nourishing them. So they may not even as much need to come to these groups every week for their own mental health, but in a way, they are coming because it's making them feel better, because they're giving back to community. And certainly all of us who work on the project, I always say, we are our own community. All of the professionals, there are over 100 of us. Not everyone is facilitating a group. Some of them are doing research or doing education, and everyone, spends as much time as they can give and works for them on this project. But we feel, so many of us, that, giving our time to each other and to the wider community is really nourishing us. And we are also able to gain so much strength and support from each other that we get back so much. And I think our shared purpose is to process this time and to make meaning of it and to really work actively together to hold on to hope. And I think that's also a community and active group process because it's not something that we may feel every single day individually, but when we are with others, sometimes they can help us reconnect to that, or we can borrow and lean on their strength or their hopefulness in a moment.
Beautiful. I think it relates to something also that Shimi said connects for me, that sometimes we may say, oh, we don't have the koch, the energy, the emotional energy to go out and to shul or to a program or to whatever it is. And sometimes it's right, but sometimes when we push ourselves, it actually feels really good. So I think that's a solid piece of advice that we can take from that. Before we go to kind of a closing round, I want to address some of the questions that were put in. There were two particular topics that were put in. First of all, Shira Gordon, who led our Breath, Body, Mind groups over COVID and beyond. And literally just this week, this stopped and she trained others. It's really an amazing thing. And this gave people really a wonderful space. So she dropped in, for those who can look at the chat, that you can go to sessions. And she says some of them are free and online. She has reached 4,000 people. They have reached 4,000 people in Israel since October 7th. And you can go onto the chat to see. So thank you, Shira, for both your work and for putting that in. So Eliana Augenbrunn has put in a question about intergenerational trauma. This is actually a focus of hers. She's done a lot of research on this, and she's interested in hearing, how does intergenerational trauma impact how we react to current trauma? This is a little bit taking a step backwards, but in our talk, not backwards in our work. But if you don't mind addressing this question, October 7th was so triggering for so many of us. Other people have also experienced trauma over the generations. How do we understand others and ask others to understand us? Does that one of you want to speak to that, to intergenerational trauma? Tara, are you comfortable?
Sure, I'm happy to begin that. Certainly, intergenerational trauma is something that we think about and talk about regularly in our community because we know that what happened on 10/7 is not an isolated incident, and that many of us, if not all of us, are carrying the history of our people, and we're in various proximities to it depending on our families and what has been passed down, and it informs how we are experiencing it now. And I always like to bring in that it's not only informing us in terms of the trauma or the hypervigilance and the anxiety and fear and worry what's going to come next. It's also often informing our capacity for growth and to have strength to manage and continue to go on living during this time. So we really often can bring two things because of our history. And we do talk about this actively. It's one of the things that we talk about as impacting Jewish mental health during this time. And I mentioned some of the others earlier, but thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I'm hearing intergenerational trauma as well as intergenerational resilience. Okay, great. And this is something that, Janet, it's not really a question, it's a thought, which feels really beautiful, which speaks to what you said, Tara, that people who have already experienced a form of communal support and themselves are perhaps not struggling at the moment, but they're still in the support groups in order to give support to others, which in turn comes back and feeds or supports them or nourishes them. So Janet Kirschheimer, another wonderful community member whose focus is on Holocaust, we've benefited much from her poetry and her speaking about it. And she said that that you said, Tara, that for many people these feelings are new with October 7th and anti-Semitism. But as the daughter of Holocaust survivors, perhaps people who are children of Holocaust survivors could be of help because it's not new for them. They understand it. They know how to talk about it. I think that that's a really interesting lens to think about. Thank you, Janet, for that offer. We could think about how that can be put into action, but really appreciating. It's a beauty. Yeah.
I see. Just to say, first of all, thank you for saying that. And we do. One of the most incredible parts of our groups are that most of them are very intergenerational. We have in my group that I facilitate now for about 2 years every week. I've had people in their 20s all the way through their 80s, and it is one of the, I think, most incredible experiences to see the generations, and they actually are often supporting and helping each other depending on who's coming in with. If it's a hard day for someone who's coming in because of they've been through a previous war in Israel and they're really feeling so much trauma that day. Someone who may be younger, maybe bringing something new to them, and vice versa. The history and the being able to get through, these experiences in the past, someone from an older generation, often are informing our younger members on, putting this through a historical lens. We're still here, and this is how we did it. And so it's an incredible experience bringing community together across the generations, for sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I'll just add
Please.
the downside of trauma that we're familiar with is post-traumatic stress.
Mm.
But as much as there's post-traumatic stress, there's also post-traumatic growth, which maybe doesn't get as much ink. But it absolutely is a phenomenon that we see on par with post-traumatic stress. And the people who have gone through the Holocaust, so many talk about and
Yes.
speak about and share their growth and their strength. And there's a lot for us to learn and gain from that.
It's really beautiful. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I'm going to, first of all, before we even go to the last question, I have to thank both of you for opening this conversation. This was a dream that Rabbi Yali and I dreamed of, that we would open a conversation that has not yet been opened in this community and felt too hard to open for a long time. And we felt we're ready. And so we thank both of you for your compassion and wisdom and willingness to be vulnerable and open. And we're just very, very grateful. And we see this just as a first step, but not a first step that she'll just stay in the first steps. We certainly are planning on continuing to have annual wellness and mental health, but we don't want to wait a whole year until we do the next step. So stay tuned, everybody, as we work on that. I would like to ask each of you as a gift to all of us, and you can decide who should speak first about, given everything that we've heard, and we've heard many different things, where do you see hope?
Go ahead, Shimi.
Okay. um, I had to think about this one because when we think about trauma, just to define it in one way, trauma is a loss of a sense of safety and security. And it can be hard to find hope when there's no safety and security. Um, but one of the things that I think about quite a lot, and I believe in terms of like my worldview, is that at any given moment, there are many, many things that are great and going well,
Mm,
personally and in the world. And there are many, many things that are bad and evil and not going well. And we only have the ability to focus on a tiny sliver of that. So we get to choose where we focus that sliver of attention. And that's helped me. That's given me permission to shift away from the things that are really loud and bad to the things that are okay and going well and maybe even beautiful.
mm,
And one of those things, I'm sure many of you have heard this, is that when there's so much bad, how do you cope? Look for the help. Look for the helpers, the people who are running toward the emergency services, the social workers and therapists, the people who create organizations that make group support available. Look for the help because it's always there. The helpers are reliably always there. And that's really helped me see that, because there is, of course, so much negative to focus on, and there is so much positive. And I just really, I'll look, I'll see an ambulance going down, and I'll, I'll send a prayer along with them, and also gratitude for the fact that they are here and are helping. And I also want to express gratitude for you, Rabbi Bracha and Rabbi Ali, who are promoting wellness and mental health. This is also this is also helping.
Thank you. Beautiful.
I agree that
You know,
that's
I just have to say, you reminded me. Remember, I don't know if you remember this, but during COVID, we had a 7 o'clock clapping. Did you
Yes.
have that? You
And
just
noise
reminded me.
making.
It
Yeah,
was so beautiful. We all stood by our windows. I don't know if you had that, Tara, but we had it in Riverdale. I don't know where else it was. Seven
yeah.
o'clock, everybody clapped, and you knew you felt this amazing connection for all the first responders who were going out into the scary world of COVID. So, and that felt so amazingly good that we had a moment that we could connect. So thank you for helping me remember a piece of good, a slice of light. Beautiful, beautiful. Tara.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing that. It's making me feel very warm too. And I think, really it's so important to think about how what we hold on to that's hopeful, and also to give ourselves permission to do that. Sometimes, when there's so much that's difficult or challenging or bad happening in the world, we may feel guilty to feel something positive or connect to something hopeful and positive, and we need to know that we absolutely should be doing that. It's both. Always holding both is so important for our capacity for resilience and to get through these times. And I think probably it's no surprise to anyone here that really what you just spoke about, the connection of a community, the clapping for those helpers who are those frontline workers, and that feeling of everyone clapping at that same time every evening. I had forgotten about that too. That to me is the most inspiring, hopeful piece that allows me to get up every day and do this work. I facilitating my group is one of my favorite hours of the week. And, just watching how the community comes together, and there's a rhythm to that hour every week where, they're sharing pain, and then they move and start to share hope and hold that together as well. And in watching that is literally the most beautiful experience, to witness our community's capacity to do that. And the community that has become the Jewish Community Mental Health Initiative is, likewise the most inspiring community I could imagine. So I am so grateful that, you've put this community together here tonight. And uh, thank you for all of the work that both of you are doing.
Thank you. Sorry. Want to be able to see the whole community. I'm taking off the spotlights so we can see everybody who's on and see the people and say goodbye to them and thank them. Thank each and every one of you for coming on and listening and holding this. We hope that you took away at least one tip. We will share resources in the coming week in an email when we recap the whole Shabbat. There are many different resources we want to offer. And we love that you came on. We hope that this was helpful. Huge thanks to Shimi and Tara for giving of their time so really with a full heart. I learned so much, and I'm leaving feeling calmer and more hopeful. So have a good week, everybody. So Chodesh Shvat this week. Shvat is when things start to grow, at least in Israel. Hard to imagine with the snow outside, but this is the month when it turns. So let's all find hopeful things that maybe we plant them or we see their seeds grow. That's our wish, my wish for us. Well, all
Amen.
Shavua Tov.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.